Okay, so y'all should be able to see the PowerPoint. Let me know if you can't. So as I mentioned, Virginia Poverty Law Center is part of the legal aid family, but we're not a frontline legal aid program, but we work to break down the barriers, systemic barriers that keep people in poverty in Virginia. And what we're going to talk about today is the Eviction Defense Center, which is a tool that provides crucial information and simple, effective legal tools that tenants can use to understand the law and to defend their rights in court when they're facing a potential eviction. It's designed for to be easily usable by our target audience, so folks who are facing eviction, especially lower income folks. It is mobile first design. It uses plain language as much as possible, and it has the accessibility features that make it more usable to folks who have disabilities and things like that. And so before we even jump into this, because I'm a lawyer, I have to tell you that none of this is legal advice. Legal advice is specific to a case and it comes from an attorney. This is all legal information. So what I'm going to tell you about this tool is just information. And what the tool is going to relay to the folks that use it is just legal information. It's not legal advice. And so you need to talk to an attorney, or your patrons need to talk to an attorney if they want to get specific legal advice that's based on their individual case. So that's kind of a good introduction, that little disclaimer. The reason why we do that little disclaimer is because in all kinds of legal areas, there are different sort of levels of assistance. And if we start at the bottom, there is, in this graphic, there's basically an orientation to what the eviction process is and how it works. There are, as you go up and get a little bit more specific, a little more intensive type of assistance, there's answers to frequently asked questions that people might have, which I would imagine you hear sometimes, like people say, my landlord won't fix my water heater. Should I just withhold my rent? Those sorts of general questions. There's situation-specific information, which is not just general, like, oh, tenants need to pay their rent every month. That's very general, but it is information that's specific to somebody's situation, which might be different if they own a mobile home and they're renting the lot and they've fallen behind on rent. They're in a different situation than somebody who lives in public housing and is their landlord thinks that they have a pet, but really it's a service animal. Different situations, the more context specific the information can be, the better assistance it is. Then there's tools for court to use in court. And we will show you some of those and explain those. Those are things that we've developed as part of the Eviction Defense Center. Then better than all of those is actual advice from an individual attorney who's looking at your specific case, at a person's specific case. And then the best is representation from an attorney, representation either in court or in maybe calling the landlord and saying, hey, can we work this out? Or whatever the case may be. So those are different levels of assistance. And the top two there, attorney advice and attorney representation, that's what somebody can get from legal aid. So if they're eligible, if legal aid has the capacity and there's not a conflict of interest and things like that, then the best service that somebody can get and the best advice you can give someone who comes in with questions if they're facing eviction is to try and help them connect with legal aid to see if they can get advice from an attorney or representation from an attorney. That's always going to be the best. And so what we're offering is not a substitute for that at all. It is a lower level of assistance, but we know that there's a lot more people that need some help in these situations than legal aid can actually represent or advise. And there's people in different situations where they might have, 5 different fires burning in their life. And so they actually start focusing on the eviction case the day before court, and which doesn't really give them an opportunity to get through intake at legal aid. So we're trying to offer that next best level of assistance that can make a difference for people who are facing potential eviction. So, so you all are what in the access to justice literature is called a trusted intermediary. So people face legal issues, or they might not even identify them as a legal issue. They might just identify them as a housing problem or a food stamps problem or whatever the case may be. But you're one of the frontline folks who, as I understand, people show up at the library and they say, I need information about this situation. And so you, along with social workers and church workers and free clinic, people at free clinics and stuff, are trusted intermediaries. And so we understand that you get folks coming and patrons coming and saying, hey, this is my situation. What can I do about it? You're not lawyers and you can't give legal advice, but we want to provide you with tools to help people find the information that is going to be useful to them. And so we've put together, and Charlie mentioned it, that there's a link in the chat, and there's also a link in the meeting request to our guide. It's a PDF document. It's kind of long, but the last sort of 2/3 of it are copies, example copies of some of these tools that someone can take to court. And what it does is it explains a little bit about the context. So what happens in an eviction, what is the process, and what is the timeline, about how you can help people to use the Eviction Defense Center, the content that's on the Eviction Defense Center, the different types of pages, the kind of information that's found on each of those pages. There's a glossary in the PDF that we sent also on the Eviction Defense Center online. There are some examples of the ways that the Eviction Defense Center can help someone who is facing potential eviction. There are examples in there. And then those PDFs of the tools that people can take to court. Now those I should make it a little more clear in the actual PDF in the kit itself. Those PDFs of the tools that someone can take to court, those are not for you to print off and hand to them. The ones that you print that they're going to want to print are going to be the ones that are identified to them as they use the actual Eviction Defense Center tool online. And I'll show you how that looks. So yeah, let me just jump right into it and give you a quick tour of the Eviction Defense Center online. And let me pull that up. Where is that? Okay. Okay, so this is the Eviction Defense Center online. There are a couple of ways to navigate. There's a navigation bar at the top with different options. That navigation bar is the same at the top of every page on the Eviction Defense Center. And then there is this front page menu of items. So it is, what can we help you do? So this is directed towards the person who is the patron or the person who's facing potential eviction. And there are a few different things that it can help them do. I'm going to start at the end here. So one, it can help them find answers to questions, commonly asked questions. And some of those are specific to they're all related to the eviction context. Some of those are very specifically about being evicted, but some of them are about things that might lead to eviction. Like, what if my landlord won't make repairs to my property, and things like that. So there's this one, help me read an eviction notice I got. So I would imagine that people come in sometimes and they have a notice in their hand that they got from the landlord or from the court or from the sheriff's office. They say, I don't know what this means. This is a section that explains what each of the important notices means and how you can read them. And I'll give you a glimpse of these in just a moment, of all of these. Understand the eviction process. That is basically the steps in the process. Page 3 of the the guide, the PDF guide that you have the links to, includes that as well in printed form. But this is, I'll just take you here now. So the steps in the eviction process, and it lists them in order of the procedural steps that have to happen if a landlord wants to evict a tenant. A landlord can't just lock somebody out or turn off the utilities or whatever if they want to evict somebody, even if that person has stopped paying rent or has violated the terms of the lease or whatever. They have to go through this process, and this explains each step in that process. Very important for helping the person understand where they are in the process, because what they can do to try to avoid eviction is different at different stages of the process. Earlier on, obviously, if you can sort of nip something in the bud, and then you might be able to avoid actually getting a court case filed against you. If you already have a court case filed against you, then the earlier you respond to that, the more options you have. Once the judge has already made a judgment against you and told the landlords that they can go ahead and evict you, then you have fewer options to try and stop the eviction. So it's important to help them understand where they are in this process. So that's the understanding the eviction process. Up here, the link to that is steps to eviction. So here, find answers to other questions. This is a page on tenants' legal rights where you can get to, again, your documents and notices, and also the glossary. But then here, as I mentioned, are some common questions that might relate to an imminent eviction, or might relate to a question that somebody has before an eviction is imminent, like what if my landlord won't make repairs, or what if I don't have a written lease, things like that. So for your documents and notices, here are the important notices that somebody might get from their landlord or from the court or the sheriff, that they're going to need to understand what it means and know how to respond to that. And so, for instance, a notice of unpaid rent, each one of these pages explains what is the notice called, what does it mean, what is in the notice, or what are the elements that are required to be in the notice. Some of them will have a sample notice here, and then some things to keep in mind. You can see that there's links throughout this to, links down here to things that they can do about it once they've figured out what this means, or the steps in the eviction process, so they can see, okay, well, once I got this notice, well, where does that put me in this eviction process? Also on every page, there are multiple links for getting in touch with local legal aid. So you all, that's up here with Find Legal Aid in this in the navigation bar, and it's also going to be at the bottom of every page. Find legal aid near you. Now, you all don't need to. This is a statewide resource, and so if somebody's in Wise County, they don't necessarily know who their local legal aid is, so they would go here to actually find them by entering the city or county or the zip code. Because you're City of Richmond, you know who the local legal aids are, CVLAS and LAJC, and but you can get their contact information on here if you don't have it already at your fingertips to help connect someone. So that's up here where it says find a free legal aid attorney. That takes you to the same lookup page that lets you look up who your local legal aid is. The heart of the Eviction Defense Center is really the Fight My Eviction option. And so what that is in order to get somebody situation-specific information, so in other words, different information for somebody who's living in a mobile home park and has fallen behind on their rent, and other information for somebody who's in public housing and has a service animal, we need to collect a little bit of information to find out a few things. And so this Fight My Eviction is a decision tree. We ask people like 4 or 5 questions, and then we can give them specific information that's specific to their situation. And so helping somebody step through this, if they already got a notice from their landlord or from the courts or something like that, then stepping them through this is going to be valuable and helpful for them. So we're going to answer a few simple questions to get the legal information that's about our situation. So let's start. So it asks you questions about a few different things. One is, where are you in that process, the sequential process towards eviction? So it starts with, has your landlord started a court case against you? So let's say that someone comes in, they have a summons from the court, and they say, well, what does this mean and what can I do? So we would say, if they have a summons, now here you can show them what a summons is. So this explains the information that's in there. This is a sample of what a summons looks like and where that information shows up on the summons, what is important information. And so let's say I got a summons and I've got court coming up. So I'm going to say, yes, my landlord already filed a court case against me. And then what has happened in your court case? Let's say I've got the first court date coming up. It's coming up tomorrow, so I can't call legal aid and get through intake. Let's say I've got it coming up tomorrow, but maybe they already had the case and the judge said that the landlord can evict them. Well, they want to know what they can do at this point. Or if court's over, the sheriff's already given me a notice scheduling my final eviction. That's another step in the process. But let's say I've got court coming up tomorrow. So I'm going to click here. What kind of housing do you live in? Well, I live in an apartment. So I'm going to click apartment or home. Do I pay reduced rent? This is for identifying if somebody is in public or subsidized housing, because they have different rights. Let's say I'm not in public or subsidized housing. I just pay regular rent. So I'm going to click that. And then the third thing is, so the first factor that we're asking them about is where they are in the process. Second factor is what kind of housing they're in. The third factor is what is the reason that I'm facing potential eviction? So is it for unpaid rent or is it for some other reason? And they're going to need to find this on the summons that they got from the court. So here I can click on this and it has this same information here, but at the bottom it says, what is the legal reason? And it shows me how to look for the legal reason. So is it just unpaid rent? Well, if they marked this here and didn't put anything in this next space, then it is just about unpaid rent. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to say it's just about rent or other money. Now it's showing me information from my situation. And the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to check and make sure that this is for me. So this basically reflects the answers that I gave as I was filling out as I was selecting answers in the decision tree. And it shows that I have a court hearing soon for an eviction case. That's right, I've got it tomorrow. The reason for the eviction is unpaid rent. That's true because I checked on the summons and that's the box that they checked. I live in a rented house, apartment, or mobile home, yes. And the government does not help me pay my rent. So I know I'm in the right place. This is the right information for me. Otherwise, I can go back and answer the questions again. Both at the top of the page and the bottom of the page, there's one of these buttons that says email this page to me. So I can click there, I can enter my email address, or maybe I enter the email address of my sister because my sister has a printer at home and I can't print something, but she can. Or I send this to, I copy my husband on this or my wife or whatever, so that they have the same information I have and send that to them, to their email. But so you check and see if I'm the person this is really for, and then what you should know are the key pieces of information that might have an effect on your case. So these are things like, well, was your rent actually paid up? You know, they filed this case, but actually I was never behind on my rent. Maybe they just screwed something up in the office. And so if that's the case, this tells me to bring a receipt or a tenant ledger and show them to the judge and ask the judge to throw out the case. Did you get the notice of your rights? That's something that a landlord is required to give before they can file a case in court. Is the 5-day notice correct? For both of the, well, can you pay now? So this is one way that you can stop an eviction that's only about unpaid rent, even after the landlord has filed a case in court, even after they've gotten a judgment against you. And then there's a summary at the bottom of what you can do, what the tenant can do to possibly affect this, maybe win the case, get the case thrown out. Here we've got these little icons here, these document icons, and then it says download and print a form that you can give to the judge if you did not get this statement of tenant rights and responsibilities. These are, and I'll show you what this looks like. So these are PDFs. These are what we call the tools for use in court. And there is, for each of these tools, I'm gonna show you this real quick. It's got a page that sort of explains what you should have gotten, and what you can do about it if you didn't. Then it's got a page that is a script. So this is something that the tenant can actually just read word for word while they're in court, so that when they're nervous, they don't have to remember, what was I supposed to say? And how was I supposed to ask the judge to do this? And then there's a form that somebody can sign and ask the judge, can I hand this to you? Because this explains what I'm asking you to do and why the law says you should do this. Most judges will let the tenant do that. It's very helpful so that a tenant doesn't have to try to over-explain things or explain the legal reasoning behind things. People are nervous enough as it is, and judges sometimes can be impatient occasionally, and maybe a judge is used to hearing it a certain way, and they might prefer to hear it a certain way that a lawyer might explain it to them. And so a form that somebody can give to them is can be very useful. So that's actually, okay, so that's what the Eviction Defense Center looks like. And printing these forms is an important service that if this applies to somebody, so somebody, maybe they did get the statement of tenant rights, most tenants will have gotten the statement of tenant rights. And so this is not going to be something that's helpful to them, knowing that, well, if my landlord hadn't given it to me, he shouldn't have filed the case, but it's not going to help me because they did give it to me. But this other one might be helpful. And so helping them print these forms and prepare them for court can be super useful. A lot of folks, as you know, don't have printers at home if they have computers at all. And so this is a sort of a key benefit from that you can offer them. So real quickly through helping others use the Eviction Defense Center. So this is reflected in page 4 of the PDF that you have. But there's sort of a hierarchy to the way there's a hierarchy of service, of assistance that somebody can get. There's kind of a hierarchy to the way you might want to help them use this tool. And number 1 is check and see if they have already tried legal aid. If they've got a week before their case comes up, or if they just barely got this notice from the landlord, they have a little bit of time and they should really try to connect with legal aid. If they can get advice from a legal aid attorney, that's the best service they're going to get. Helping them understand the steps to eviction, that is critical so that they can orient themselves. And then they can go through the Fight My Eviction decision tree if that's the step they're at. Understanding their legal rights, those frequently asked questions, that can be critical early on so they can avoid mistakes like withholding their rent because the landlord hasn't fixed the plumbing or something like that. That's something that is intuitively might make sense to do, but once you understand and read the answer to that question from the frequently asked questions, you'll know, okay, I'm going to not do that and I'm going to avoid some headache. And then helping them through this Fight My Eviction decision tree, very valuable for folks who have, especially if they've got court coming up. But even if it's later than that or earlier than that. So if they get a notice that says, hey, we think you're violating the rules because you've got a dog in your household and we have a no pets policy, Well, once they get that letter, they've got some time to figure out how to resolve that and either explain to the landlord that that's actually a service animal, or to find a new home for the dog or whatever, or maybe they were just had it for a day or something like that, but they can clear that up. Or if they've got court, then they can prepare using the tools for the court. So the tools for court, those are critical. Those are something that what our real goal is in the big picture to help it so that people who don't have attorneys, they're not going to get help from legal aid, can have a fighting chance in court. And so something they can do to affect the way the judge carries out these proceedings, and the kind of information the judge is looking at. That's not intuitive. It's not comfortable for people. It's not comfortable for a lot of lawyers to do that. It's really uncomfortable and unrealistic to expect people who are not lawyers, who are not in court frequently, to be able to have the understanding and the poise and the vocabulary and all of that stuff to really affect the proceedings. So each one of these tools that they can link to from that page, information for your situation, has an explanation and instructions. It has a script they can read aloud. So they literally just read it to the judge. It helps them to not get tongue-tied. And then a form to give to the judge. Some judges might not take the form, most hopefully will, but that is presented in a way that is understandable to the judge, and it gives the judge the legal reasoning why they should do this thing, either throw out the case because the landlord didn't follow the rules when they were filing it, or that the tenant wants to contest this. I want to show the court that actually this is not a pet, this is a service animal, and so they shouldn't be doing this to me. That's the kind of action that hopefully a judge will take when the person gives them this form. And this is just again showing the different elements to those court tools. So the pilot project is something that, because people rely on you as trusted intermediaries, we wanted to give you this guide to how to use the Eviction Defense Center to help other people who need help. We've designed it to be as useful and usable and accessible as possible, but we know that people have barriers or concerns or anxieties, and a lot of folks are going to want a little bit of hand-holding so that they know they can feel like they're doing it right. And they're going to need, if they've got court coming up, they're going to want to be able to print off these forms that they can take to court with them. And so, that's why we want some on-site assistance available. We're going to be on site at the main library. We have scheduled times right now, but we can also schedule times for the other branches of the library as you want them, and identify appropriate times, and as we can make ourselves available to be on site. If we can't be on site, then we want to provide support remotely by text or phone or email or whatever. We can come up with hours for you to call in if we need to do that. And we can also do other Zoom trainings and presentations if there are other folks that you want to be able to see this, or you want us to be able to explain this to, or other questions that come up afterwards. So we're going to be doing this partnership, this pilot for the months of July and August. And then we'll see. Hopefully, we will learn a lot from you as you're helping people, and from us as we're doing office hours and helping people. We'll learn a lot about what could be improved about the tool. And also, you'll let us know what could be improved about this guide that you have that helps you to step your patrons through the tool, so that we can improve the experience for everybody. And then in the fall, hopefully have a larger rollout where we are making this available to more service providers so that they can help their clients and patrons. And this is our contact information. Feel free to contact us directly, or to contact Charlie and say, hey, I had a question about this one thing. Maybe Charlie knows, or maybe Charlie will say, that's great. do you want to contact Phil or Annika, or do you want me to? And he could broker that, but we're happy to respond to questions and help you with things as well. So that was a pretty quick run through, but I know your time is valuable and you're busy, and there you go. So thank you very much, first of all, for all the services, not just in this context, but all the services you provide to our neighbors who don't have access to a lot of other resources. We have huge respect for the roles you play and the work you do in serving the community. And we're hoping that this can make one piece of that a little easier for you and more effective for your patrons.
Thank you, Phil. That was amazing. I'm really excited about the pilot program. For everybody here, I put the link to the landing page. Phil might be tweaking it a little with the language and the layout, but save that link. If you get people, if you get patrons coming in and they're asking for more detailed information, you can send them to Maine during those hours and that are on the landing page. And so we'll have that up on the law library. We'll push it out a little bit. We've done a press release today. We'll see about press, and like we're going to hit the ground running Monday. So there will be opportunities for patrons across the system to come and get those come to those open hours and get assistance. But as Phil said, I'm always around. They're always around as much as we can be to answer questions, including right now. I know we're done at this point. If anybody needs to hop on to their desk duties or other things like that, please do. But if anybody has any questions or concerns or anything to bring up right now, happy to take those. Oh, let me pull up the chat. I don't think anything's come across the chat, but got it. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, email me. We can connect you with Phil and Annika. Again, thanks to both of you, and we're really looking forward to this. And I also extend my heartfelt gratitude to what you all do for our patrons and our neighbors all the time, legal aid associations and attorneys. So really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. We're looking forward to getting started with in-person hours on Monday at Maine.
Yep.
Maine
Monday
branch.
at Maine. Yeah, we'll see you then. Okay. All right. For everybody else, have a good afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye.